to the MCU, Ant-Man plugs. Okay, now give your 2-minute thoughts on Ant-Man.
Okay, right. Thoughts on Ant-Man. Going into this, I had no idea how I was going to feel about it. After rewatching it, I felt that compared to most solo origin films in the MCU, it's one of the more average ones. Because the last time we had a film like this was First Avenger, Captain America: First Avenger, and since then we've had many team-up films or films involving multiple main characters. So this one was the first time we've seen a solo main character origin story in a very long time. So compared to the others, I would say it's very, very average. I think Paul Rudd is a great choice for Ant-Man just because I think Paul Rudd is such a great actor in terms of comedic timing and just natural charisma. But other than that, the plot itself is a very basic plot. It's basically a heist slash spy kind of plot, and that can be fun at times. In this, it's done okay, but it always feels like there's something just missing, and it feels like there's nothing really much else going on. It's what it really is Paul Rudd's character Ant-Man trying to win or earn that look in his daughter's eye, as many people in this film say. So, and while that's a good motivation, there's not much else apart from Hank Pym's and Hope Pym's sort of relationship with each other, and then that's kind of it, really. It's very basic, fun at times and entertaining, but just for me, there's something missing to make it really a good film for me.
Okay. So yeah, this definitely felt like a typical sort of phase 1 film, if that makes sense. And it was very oddly placed between Age of Ultron and Civil War, so which are like two of the biggest films in the franchise. Yeah. And then you got Ant-Man, which is just a very, run-of-the-mill Marvel film. Yeah. In terms of like what it sets out to do, which it's very strange that this late in the game it's going for that role. But at the same time, I actually had a lot of fun with it. I think part of it is to do with the comedy and the special effects. I found the shrink and grow effects in this film to be very impressive and convincing. Yeah. Like, it was very convincing, and this film managed to tell its story in a way that was unique to all the other films, and I think that's where it stands out mainly. But there's definitely a sense that this is a very minor film that you could skip if you wanted to, apart from the fact that he appears later.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this film, like all the other films that are solo origin films in the series, is to introduce Ant-Man / the main character, and the film to show us what kind of character he is, what his powers are, and what his real overall motivations are as a character. And it all does that very well. The effects are great. Like, for example, the section where he goes small for the first time and is going around the building, going into like the sewers and stuff like that, or in drains and pipes and stuff like that, is all very fun. Other than that, it's very average Marvel solo film, and it definitely has that feel about it. It's the special effects have a lot going for it, and the comedy in this film is one of its highlights.
Yeah, I would say this film has a lot of the same positives that the first Thor movie has. Special effects, great main cast, like in terms of just like the central character is cast really well. The comedy's really good, but at the same time, there is something generic about it that's a bit strange.
Yeah, it like I said, I think this just feels like there's something missing from this film. It feels like there's something missing at its core to really make it a really good film. Like, this is a good introduction for a character like Ant-Man, and I do feel like Paul Rudd is the perfect casting choice for him, just to play off his sort of comedic sort of character. And all the cast around him are very good, I would say. I think especially characters like Hank Pym and Hope Pym, I think, are quite interesting characters. other than that, it just feels like, for example, the villain feels quite separate from him in a sense, because his sort of story doesn't have much to do with the motivations
Yeah,
of Ant-Man. It's very separate.
there's definitely a sense, like, unironically, there is a sense of small scale to it.
Yeah, yeah. It's very ironic that it feels like, other than that, this is more of an introduction for a character. It just feels like, much like in the same way that Age of Ultron felt unnecessary, this film and plot doesn't seem that
Yeah,
necessary to the overall feeling of
and
the MCU.
I would also say, whilst I wasn't necessarily bored at any point, I don't think this plot needed 2 hours.
Yeah, at time it feels like, for example, it goes on for too long, and I think a biggest example of it feels like it's going a bit too long, or there's scenes that do seem a bit like filler. I would say the Ant-Man going to the Avengers headquarters, while it's a
Yeah.
fun scene and it's a very interesting to see an Avenger like Falcon in the film, it's something that easily could have been cut out. I would say
Mm.
it could have been cut out, but it is fun. But does this really need to be a 2 hour film just to keep up with the same time lengths of all the other films? To me, no. It doesn't really need that. It could easily be cut off by 20 minutes and feel a lot more tighter as a story.
Yeah. Anyway, let's start with Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man.
Right, yeah. Scott Lang is when we first introduced to him, we introduced to him in a prison, and him being serving his time and then out of prison, and then instantly being asked to get back into the life of crime, and he says no. He has a daughter and he wants to basically be there for his daughter, and that's a good motivation. But then after having a job but then getting fired because of his life of crime, he then gets back in the game and he robs Hank Pym's mansion. And throughout the film, you get a sense that he's a very fun dad. For example, he's a very fun character. And Paul Rudd's got a lot of charisma, I would say. I think he's
Oh
very
yeah,
charismatic.
I think he's the highlight of the film.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good thing. Obviously, in a solo film, he needs to be the best part about it, and I would say he is. And I think his motivations are well developed. I would say he's very entertaining as well, and he suits the sort of character that the writers are trying to pull off. I think the one problem I have with this film is the fact that the antagonist and protagonist don't seem like they have much connection between each other, or don't have much interaction at all. The real conflict is between Hank Pym and, I can't even remember the villain's name, but between them, that's what it feels like.
And I think there's a section in the trivia that does explain why that feels a bit strange.
Yeah.
But basically the reason is because originally Hank Pym was going to be Ant-Man, but then they changed it to be, Scott Lang.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's one of the big things that's probably missing, is the fact that Ant-Man versus the Yellow Jacket thing feels very secondary until the final act. Even though this whole plot is to basically get the Yellow Jacket so the villain cannot basically come up with this plan to build all these suits for the military to win fights and wars and stuff like that. It just feels like there's no interaction between them. It's really just Hank Pym versus the villain in this film. And while those scenes together are quite good, and I would say there's a pretty good, decent amount of dialogue between them, it just doesn't feel like that should be the focus.
Yeah.
Because that's very much the focus in this film, other than Scott Lang trying to get back into his daughter's life, in a sense. So it's very odd, and doesn't seem like it's well handled in that respect at times, I would say.
Yeah, but overall I do like the sort of conflict of he's trying to do the right thing, but the only thing he knows how to do is illegal.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a fun thing, especially at the beginning. I do like the first heist scene.
And I think it's actually appropriate that this comes before Civil War, because that shows a small scale version of what would come in the next film, to where doing something illegal because it's right is the moral, is the what's the word? It's the sort of what you got to think through. It's like, do I abide by the law, or do I do what I think is right?
Yeah.
And this film does it.
Yeah.
This film does it on a small scale with one character and shows it to you in a simple form before moving on to Civil War, which does it in a more complex form, which I think is a great thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it does that well. And again, this film is very fun. It's a very fun and entertaining film when you're just watching it.
Yeah.
It just feels like there's not much else. There's not much depth to it, is what I would say. I think that's one of the big things.
Yeah. I mean, I've always thought of Ant-Man as he's kind of like a caricature of Spider-Man if he was a dad.
Yeah, I would say in a sense, yeah. And it's very much in that same kind of like vein, I would say, yeah. And there's obviously both like, in a sense, kind of similar characters in the way, but Ant-Man obviously being in this film, obviously being a dad, trying to get back into his daughter's life is a big thing for him to say.
I would say Spider-Man's a bit more cheeky.
Yeah.
Whereas Ant-Man's a bit awkward. He's just like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly. A big example of that is when Hank Pym and Hope
comedy, yeah.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, biggest example of that is like when Hank Pym and Hope are having this sort of moment, learning about how their mum died, and then at the end of that, Scott says, "Oh, this is awesome. This is great," and then he realizes, "Oh, I ruined the moment, didn't I?" So stuff like that. He's quite awkward in those kind of situations.
Yeah,
which is nice to have that sort of like characteristic.
When Hank catches him kissing his daughter, and
that was actually one of my favorite bits in the film.
He's just like, "What are you doing? It was all your fault." And he's like,
"No,
Scott, you're full of shit."
No, like, my favorite part is like, and when Hope's saying nothing's happening, and Scott's like, "Whoa, a little bit of something is happening," and he's just trying to play it off, saying, "Don't know why you did that, Hope," and he's like, walks away, and he's like, "You're full of shit," and he's like, "Yeah." So that's one of my favorite. That's one of the funniest parts of the film. I say, I think that's a really, really funny scene. But yeah, there's a lot of good comedy in this film, and it's done very well. I think like one of my favorite parts is like the sort of banter between Falcon and Ant-Man, when like, for example, he's saying, "Hi, I'm Scott Lang," and he really just says Scott Lang.
It's like, what does that mean to the Avengers?
Yeah, exactly. But it's also the sense of he's never done something like this before, and he's basically telling people his plans when he's doing something illegal. It's like, he may be a good thief, but he's not good with interactions.
It'd be like if like some indie drummer from down the road goes up to the Beatles. He's like, "Hey, can I join the band?" And they're like, "No."
Yeah. But yeah, Paul Rudd is definitely the best choice, I would say, for Ant-Man, because he, like I said, is very charismatic and he fits the character's comedy elements, I would say, and he can pull off these emotional moments as well.
Yeah, I kind of like how they kind of portray him as like he's the shit superhero.
Yeah, he basically is, because like the first thing when he's brought on board, the first thing he says, like, "I think our first move is calling the Avengers." It's like he's got, like, in a sense, not like total confidence in himself. He wants all the help he can get, in a sense, and that's quite funny. And I do like how they kind of like address that in a sense, and they do have a reason, because Pym doesn't want this kind of technology getting into the hands of Stark. So,
but one thing that has, like we've said on many different reviews, is like when something happens earlier in the film and then it comes up again at the end, or not the end, but like comes up later. And I think in this film, the example was when they're trying to train him to jump through the keyhole and he couldn't do it. But then later in the film, when the guy shoots the hole in the glass, he jumps through the hole in the glass. Yeah,
that's quite cool.
Yeah,
I like that sort of like payoff kind of thing. Yeah. It's very cool.
Not as good as the Age of Ultron payoff, but still.
No. Yeah, but still very decent, I would say.
Yes. Anything else we want to say about Scott Lang?
Other than the scenes with his daughter that I really like, it shows off his sort of how good a father he can be. and he shows off how much he wants to be part of his daughter's life, and I do like the scenes between them. I think the kid is actually very well done. I think like because sometimes when you get child actors, they can be either annoying and stuff like that, but I think the way they write her is very well done, I would say, and it's you buy the relationship between those two, I would say.
Yeah, I think if Paul Rudd wasn't this character and you had someone like, I don't know, Edward Norton as Ant-Man, like I don't think I'd like this film as much as I do.
Yeah, he's very much like the highlight of this film, and he brings this film up just from his charisma, I would say.
Yeah, and his interactions with all the different characters.
Exactly. Yeah. This would be very, very average, even more average than I think it already is, if it wasn't Paul Rudd as the main character. So
yeah,
a lot of credit has to go to him, I would say.
Yeah, he's a big part of it. Then, of course, we have Hope Van Dyne.
Yeah.
Hope Van Dyne, was that the daughter?
Yes, Hope.
Yeah.
Hope is the daughter.
And she eventually becomes the Wasp, doesn't she?
Yeah, in the post-credit scene, it's basically revealed how they have like this sort of prototype suit, and obviously that'll be paid off in Ant-Man and the Wasp. So, yeah, they sort of hinted at that. Because throughout the film, they sort of have this sort of subplot where like Hope feels like that she should be doing this. She should be the person doing this heist instead of
I think
Scott Lang.
I think she's a good character and she has a good story, but she just has too much screen time in Act 2.
Yeah. It
And
feels like
a lot of it felt like filler.
Yeah, it just feels like the main plot seems to be pushed back a bit for this sort of interactions between Hope and Hank, which I do like, but it just feels like it's distracting from what the main actual goal is, with this sort of subplot of her wanting to be the Ant-Man in a sense, and also wanting to find out what happened to her mother. So, and it feels like it's sort of pushed forward, and it pauses the actual main plot, it seems. So, it again makes it feel like this film goes on longer than it needs to be.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, thankfully, I did watch it in 2 halves. I watched an hour at night, then I got quite sleepy, so then I watched the next hour this morning. So I did manage to watch it through in 2 halves, which made it, I imagine, would have made it a much easier watch than it would have been watching it all at once. But even then, I could still tell that the middle of the story just felt like it went on a bit long.
Yeah, it feels like, because when it came up to the Avengers headquarters scene, just before that, it felt like it naturally could have started the heist for me.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like that was a very tacked on scene, and because of the whole,
like, it was just like, oh, we need this one thing. Where do you get it? Oh, well, I'll get it from Avengers. And it's like,
yeah, they originally thought it was an old Stark warehouse, but they didn't realize it had been turned into Avengers HQ. So, and then like Scott goes in when they want to just abort it. So, but yeah, it just feels like it just feels like the pacing of this film is a bit all over the place, I would say. I feel like, especially in the middle of the film, it feels like it should be going along, but it feels like the story drags along a bit. But when it finally gets to the heist, it's very exciting and it's very fun to watch. It just feels like the middle section drags on for a little bit too long. So
yeah. But I do like with Hope Van Dyne. I like how at the end of the film she finds out about what really happened to her mother. I mean, that is a nice moment.
Yeah, and that also plays into the sort of conclusion of the film between Ant-Man and Yellow Jacket, how Scott learns about that and then uses that to defeat Yellow Jacket. So it does have a payoff and a reasoning. It just feels like that a lot of that section could have been shortened a bit for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. She's a good character, but she just had so much screen time. A lot of it didn't feel that necessary.
Yeah. I
guess there was a bit of character development going on, but still, it just felt like the plot came to a bit of a halt in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she's well acted and the performance is fine. It just feels like, again, maybe could have spent a little bit less time on it and probably maybe tried to set things up for maybe a later film. and then pay it off there. Because the second film is about Ant-Man and the Wasp. This is meant to be a Ant-Man origin story. So just feel like it's not very necessary. Also, her hair looks so much like a wig. It was really off-putting.
Yeah.
I don't know if it actually is a wig, but it looks like a wig to me. I don't know if it was or not. It just looks very off-putting.
I mean, based on the posters, I think it does change in Ant-Man and the Wasp, so that's good.
Mm-hmm. It's much longer. It's like a lot longer in Ant-Man and the Wasp. So
good.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the fringe.
Yeah. Also, it just feels like the hair is so black, it doesn't look real. If you get what I mean, it just felt
she looks like a early 2000s secretary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Like she's the kind of character, like a side character from X-Men or something.
Yeah, that's actually good. That's a good description.
Yeah. And then after her, the next character is Darren Cross, aka Yellow Jacket. So obviously he was the villain of this film, right?
Yeah, he's the way they sort of write him is this sort of crazed scientist who wants to basically prove Hank wrong in the sense that he wants to do this whole Yellow Jacket experiment, and that sort of drives him mad because of how much testing it does and how he's affected by all the chemicals and stuff like that. They sort of say that in the film, even though you can sort of like tell that it's driving him mad, but then they sort of just say it that he's been affected by this kind of stuff. And while the performance is fine, it just he feels so much like a B villain. I get in the sense that he is, but he just
definitely two-dimensional.
Yeah, just like he just wants to prove Hank wrong.
The thing is though, is like that is true, but there's been so many of those already that it's like I'm kind of used to it at this point.
Yeah, it's average.
Yeah, because with a lot of the Phase 1 films and even Phase 2 as well, there's a lot of those villains, so it's like I'm accustomed to expect it.
Yeah.
It's almost like a rarity when you get a great villain.
Yeah, we've only had like 3 or /4 good villains so far at this point. It feels like that just most of the villains that are average seem to have the same sort of motivations, in a sense that they're trying to prove something, or they're just bad, or something like that. And this film, he's definitely just seems like a bad person. There's no reasoning for us to think that he's, in a sense, doing the right thing, or that he's trying to do something good. It's very much he's just a selfish character that wants to basically prove Hank wrong, that he should have done this experiment together, but Hank was obviously holding him back. And obviously, as time went on, he sort of realized that, but realized it for the wrong reason. So, yeah, but it's something that could have maybe had a bit more development upon and maybe made him a bit more interesting, other than he's just a bit crazy and a bit of a bad person that wanted to prove his mentor wrong. So, but I do think the scenes that they share together, especially in the house before the third act is about to get on the way, I do like that scene because they sort of say that Hank saw something in him that reminded him of himself, but the reason why he pushed him away is because he saw too much of himself in there. I do like that, but there's just something that could have been done better for me.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do think the battle between Ant-Man and the Yellow Jacket at the end of the film is really cool.
Yeah, it's really well done because we haven't seen anything like that before, because this whole thing of a superhero and a villain shrinking and growing all the time, they can really make for interesting like combat scenes and action pieces, especially like, for example, when they're in the helicopter and then they get trapped in the briefcase. Now, that's like fun. That's like, for example, something like very unique.
That's one big compliment I have of this film is the action scenes and the CGI. It all looks great and it's very creative as well.
Yeah, it's unique. It's very unique compared to all the other films, because all the other films didn't really have the ability to do something like this. And that's one of the advantages this film and / characters have, that they can do set pieces like that.
And I like how it makes like everyday objects weapons.
Yeah, like the buzz zapper thing.
Yeah,
you like get flicked into it. You can't do that in other films. it's such a unique like concept. Just the things they do in this film in like battle scenes,
but
like the
my
keychain tank.
But my favorite is when he discovers how to grow things, and he grows Thomas the Tank Engine to life size.
That's one of my favorite parts of the film. It's such a weird thing. It's so funny, like, and that one of the ants grows bigger as well, and it runs past all the other people outside, and one's like, "That's a weird looking dog."
Really good.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Mm.
But yeah, no, Darren Cross, aka Yellow Jacket, very two-dimensional villain.
Yeah, good action scenes, but as a character, very just one-dimensional.
Mm. Then you had Paxton. Who was Paxton again?
Paxton was the cop who was with Scott's ex-wife.
Oh, was he the partner?
Yeah. He's there like trying to catch her after he escapes from custody.
Yeah. I thought he was great comedy.
Yeah.
Him and Scott Lang together were really funny.
Yeah, but for me, it's just I didn't care about him at all. And it feels like that's a character that I should at least care about, either if I like him or don't like him. I just didn't care.
I would say I cared about him slightly more than the bloody guy from Incredible Hulk, though.
Oh yeah,
You know,
I would agree with that.
Betty Ross's one.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that.
Because she literally just like walked away from him like as soon as she saw Bruce Banner.
Yeah, that's like they only share like 2 scenes together throughout the film, and it's so meh. In this, it's done better in terms of the sort of interaction between him and Scott, because this like Paxton wants Scott to do better, and he wants him to like succeed in a way and spend time with his daughter, but he knows that he hasn't earned it because of his life of crime. But then when he realizes that what he's doing with the Ant-Man suit and stuff like that, he realizes he's trying to do good, and obviously like lets him go at the end. So it's a good interaction between them. But I think just as a character, Paxton is someone I really couldn't really care about in this film.
Someone I did really like though was Lewis.
Was that what's his name?
That's the guy who keeps on like telling stories and they're really long.
Yeah, I know. I can't remember the actor's name, but I know him like from a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
He's a very funny actor.
One question I have about this film is it racist that these thieves are Mexican?
No, because they don't base it off race. They just base it off that these are like kind of bad people that do crimes and stuff.
Yeah, but they all of them except for Scott Lang are Mexican.
They're not all Mexican,
aren't they?
No. One's just a black guy, and the other guy's someone else. He's a different nationality.
Oh, okay.
They're not all Mexican.
Right. Sorry, I'm mistaken there. I was thinking, I was like,
No,
it's a bit of a stereotype.
No, they're not all Mexican. They're all of different cultures and nationalities.
Right, good. I was just checking.
Yeah, but he's a very, very funny character, and his sort of the 2 instances he tells stories is very like, because this film originally directed by Edgar Wright, and that seems like such an Edgar Wright scene. Edgar Wright is one of my favorite directors because, for example, stuff like World's End, Hot Fuzz, and Shaun of the Dead. Those are like some of my like favorite films to watch just from a direction standpoint.
He was supposed to direct Rose.
Rose from Doctor.
Yeah, he was supposed to. Yeah,
that would have been really cool.
Yeah, but then he pulled out.
Edgar Wright's such a great director. He obviously wrote the film as well. He did the screenplay, and you can see that it's not a very much an Edgar Wright film from his writing compared to his others. But yeah, because there's a lot of writers in this film anyway. But it's a shame that he had to like sort of like pull out of this film and not direct it, because I think if this had like Edgar Wright direction, this could have been a really great film in terms of direction, because he is one of the best directors in film right now. Yeah. So, and I think stuff like Hot Fuzz and like World's End, for example, I think are some of his best work. I haven't seen like Baby Driver, but I would assume that's pure Edgar Wright like style, which I know I would enjoy. And It is a shame, but those two scenes are remind you of this kind of stuff that Edgar Wright would do in this film. Like those two, like the way those two stories are told are very, very, very good, and they're very funny.
Yeah,
especially the second one when it has Falcon and Stan Lee in it. It's like so like,
and they're all speaking, but they have Lewis's voice.
Yeah, and the way he sort of talks as well. Like they like if you were there for those scenes or those situations, you know they didn't talk like that, but because that's the way he talks, that's how they talk in the scene.
Like everyone's just so like funny. Like
yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
Back it up. Back it up. Back it up.
Yeah,
back
I do think that scene went a bit too long. It could have been cut in half because it was funny, but it did go on a bit too long, I would say.
Yeah.
But it's very funny.
Yeah.
He's a very funny character.
Yeah. Yeah. I just love how he's so optimistic about everything.
Yeah, he's so optimistic and happy.
He's like, we've gone to jail before, but we can do it again. It'll be fine.
And when he punches the gun, he's like, and that's what I'm saying as we do it. And then like Hope walks by, he's like, yeah, in this super serious situation, man. He's a very funny character. I mean, obviously assuming he's in Ant-Man and Wasp, but I'm interested to see what he's like in that. Because I think the actor, I really do like the actor because I've seen him in other stuff. You know, he's a very funny actor. So.
But what if Thanos clicked him away?
He must have. I bet he has. I would assume he was anyway. So.
Well, there's a 50-50 chance.
Yeah, it's very well. Yeah, it's 50-50 chance. So he gets.
I always wondered though. It's like, is it literally like 50-50, like flip a coin, or is it 50% exactly, or is it I select the 50% of people, but I choose which ones are going to go?
No, that Thanos says in Infinity War that he would do it at random. Like for example, when he had the proper physician on Titan, they said he would say it would be at random, rich and poor, man, female alike. So it's very much he would want it to be random. He wouldn't want to be passionate in terms of his choosing. He just wants it to be random. So I'd assume that when he clicked, it was random, and it was 50% of the population at that time.
Right.
So
it's exactly statistically 50%, not flip a coin. Because if you flip a coin, it could be like 60%, 40%.
Yeah. I think some people that say like, is every time he kills people, is it exactly 50%? And I don't think it could be, but I think when he snaps, he does it basically just wipes the population in half. So
yeah. What if he just like keeps snapping his fingers and he just keeps cutting it in half?
It would keep
and
going
then like
in half,
there's only one person left, and then you can't kill them because he's the only one left, and it's Ant-Man, and he crawls into his anus and explodes. Because like of course the only one left would be Ant-Man.
Yeah. Everyone always says because like actually no, that's in Ant-Man and the Wasp. So I'm not gonna say, but yeah.
Anyway, Dave.
I think he must be one of the two other heist men.
Okay.
I can't remember who's who. I can remember their faces, but I can't remember their names.
Is the other one Kurt?
It must be.
Okay.
But yeah, I think just in general, I think all the other like heist men, they're all like comic relief, and they're all like quite fun to watch because they're very different from all the other characters in this film.
Yeah.
Like they're like basically just like comic relief, which is
and it's funny because Ant-Man's funny anyway, but then you've got these other guys, and they all make a great like party group. You know?
I would agree. It's very fun to watch. Like when they get like arrested, and then they just get back up and go straight back into the van.
It's interesting because it's like it's such a different take on heist. Because like you look at something like Ocean's 11, which is a completely different. It's a heist movie, but it's very serious. It's like we're gonna go and steal this thing. Whereas in this one, it's just like, hey man, we got a van, and we're gonna go inside the house and take his money and go.
Yeah. Super tight. So,
yeah. I love
they're all very funny.
I love like when Ant-Man goes into Hank's house and like when he opens all those doors, Like I love that sequence. That's great. And then the
It's
fact that
very
it's
fun.
revealed,
Yeah.
the fact that it's revealed that Hank let him steal the suit.
Yeah, he was literally in the other room, like next to him, because in that same room they show all the monitors, and that's the room next
And
to the
then,
safe.
and then when he brings the suit back, he calls the police, and he's like, "I'm just bringing back something else that I stole." Oh,
Hope was the one who called the police on him.
yeah. Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah, they explain how like Hope is the one that called the cops, and Hank didn't want her to do that because he was just going to go and recruit him anyway. So.
Right. Funny how I'm just returning something that I stole.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not stealing anything. I was trying to something I stole. And he's like, that just shows again, he's really poor at interactions in these kind of situations throughout the film.
Sam Wilson, aka Falcon. So, is it a bit strange that at Avengers he's the only one that's on guard?
Yeah, because they sort of say that it looks like nobody's home, like, and then it appears that Falcon's the only one there. So I don't know
why. But like, why?
Yeah,
is
well, where is everybody else?
was he just like?
In this?
Was he just like having a read of a book or something?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's very odd. It's like obviously it doesn't need to be explained, but it's just interesting. Like, why is he the only one there? If they're all off doing something, either going out or they are on a mission, why isn't Falcon there? So, but it's a fun cameo. It's a really fun cameo, and it's like they have a nice interaction with each other. And it shows like how, I guess in a way, how like little of a character compared to all the other Avengers Sam Wilson is, because he easily, not easily, but he gets taken out by Ant-Man like in quite a short amount of time. And I love when Ant-Man goes into like his suit and disables his like senses so he can't detect him when he's small.
Yeah,
so that's quite cool. Yeah,
this film does a really good job of showing you what Ant-Man can do with his power.
mm-hmm.
He's actually way more dangerous than people think he is.
Yeah, I agree. Like you would think, like, oh, he can just be small, but he can go into like to things. He can go into like mechanics and disable them from the inside. So
yeah,
it's
almost like a parasite.
Like
that's parasite.
Yeah, I would say that's a good description of him. That's like superpowers.
Yeah, it's like you can't get rid of him because he's so small. He's really hard to grab.
Yeah, and he's like, and because like he has basically like more strength when he's small, so he can like throw people around as well. So yeah, it's a very interesting superpower.
Yeah. Oh. But yeah, Falcon was fun, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say it's a fun cameo and it's a fun action piece.
Yes. So I'm gonna just guess that Gail is the daughter and Maggie is the mother.
Yes, I think so. I'm just gonna look at IMDb just to be sure, but yeah, I'm assuming that's it.
Are you sure that Paxton was the stepfather, or do you think it may have been Kurt?
No, it was Paxton, because I remember Scott saying Paxton a lot.
Oh, okay. Are you sure maybe it was Paxton was one of the thieves and Kurt was the stepfather?
No, I think Paxton is the cop.
I think that the fact that I don't actually remember who these people are shows something about this film.
Yeah, it's just the characters. Well, the characters and what they do are memorable. It just feels like that their importance to the plot isn't the best thing in the world. You know, it just doesn't feel good, I guess. I don't know. But the main characters are all good, but yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, Maggie and Gail, so the mother and the daughter. Very basic character, I'd say the mother is.
Maggie is the mother. Gail is Wood Harris. He's the cop alongside Paxton, and the daughter is Cassie.
Right.
Yeah, I remember because I didn't think Gail was the name. It was, Cassie, Maggie Lang and Cassie Lang.
Right.
That's the mother and daughter.
I see. Gail.
Yeah.
Then who was Gail? Like,
Gail was Paxton's like second right hand man.
Oh, okay.
He's the one that said that's a weird looking dog.
Oh yeah.
That's gay.
Yeah, he didn't really matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, Maggie the mother.
Mm.
I thought she was quite a basic character.
Yeah, she doesn't get any, like, she gets 3 scenes in the film, I think.
Yeah, they all seem like they're just a reaction to Scott Lang's character.
Yeah. She just basically says what Scott's motivations are in the beginning of the film. It's like, be the superhero that your daughter already thinks you are. So
Yeah.
She doesn't get anything to do other than just say things, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hank Pym, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think he's alongside Ant-Man. I think he's one of the highlights of this film, particularly the actor.
Michael Douglas does a fantastic job. I think I really like him as an actor and like as Hank Pym. I really like how, in a sense, he's tormented by his past because, like he says to Cross, that there's so much of him in Cross, and he doesn't like that in a sense, and he tries to push him away because he knows he regrets, like, for example, bringing his wife onto like the Ant-Man like project and stuff, and going on missions together, and because that basically gets his wife like killed, like goes into the Phantom Zone, Quantum Realm, sorry. But yeah, I think Michael does a really, really good job, and he's quite like a fun like mentor for Scott Lang, I think, and he does a lot in this film to just sort of have this sort of like fatherly figure, but not like a proper like fatherly figure to like Scott, but it's a really good like mentor like relationship between the two. And I think also the scenes between Hope and Hank are done well, but like we said, it does feel like filler at times. But I think the content in there is very, very good.
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, I've noticed that the MCU tends to do the old wizard character quite well.
Yeah, like someone who was previously that superhero or something like that.
Yeah, it's like Odin. Odin's another example.
Yeah, that's a good example.
And I can't think of any others. Maybe Nick Fury. Not sure. That's a bit of a strange one.
Yeah, I think he is definitely the sort of overseer mentor of the Avengers, I would say, but it's not like the same kind of thing because it's not like one-to-one mentoring them in a sense. So, but that's something similar, I would say.
Yeah, but I would say Odin is is similar in that sense. So yeah, I think they're definitely better with that than they are with necessarily a lot of the, romances and villains. Quite often tend to fall flat.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the old mentor tends to be quite strong.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do think Michael Douglas is like the second best thing about this film. Obviously Paul Rudd being the best. So and I'm glad that they cast Michael Douglas for this because I think he pulls off the sort of old mentor who kind of regrets his past because of all the trauma very well. And he is quite funny as well. There's a lot of scenes where he has a nice bit of comedy.
Yes, and obviously we get a cameo at the start of the film from Howard Stark and Peggy Carter.
Yeah, nice little connection between in the MCU. It seems like I forgot how much like Peggy Carter is in these films, even though they're quite small scenes. I forgot like how much she's in the films, especially in the first 2 phases, I would say.
Yeah, because she's literally only a main character in First Avenger.
Yeah, and then in all the other films she's in, it's basic cameos. But it feels important. It feels like when they're on screen, when Howard Stark and Peggy Carter are on screen, it feels like those are very, very important scenes. Yeah. So that sort of benefit. That's like
it's interesting. It's interesting how First Avenger, like I can see why people like because even though technically chronologically it is first, but even though like it still would actually make sense as like a first film in this series because even though I found a lot of it quite boring as a story, it actually ripple effects onto all the other films.
Yeah. I would say, like, as a film itself, First Avenger, while it can be boring at times, I feel that it's also very, very important for the MCU as a whole. Like a
Yeah.
lot of it is like its sort of elements and its like core themes. They represent the rest of the MCU, and that's why I think like First Avenger is massively like underrated in terms of like its themes, because it affects the whole MCU going forward from that point. Like with
Yeah.
characters like Howard Stark and Peggy Carter.
And Bucky Barnes.
Yeah, and Bucky as well. Who, yeah, exactly. And it's like it's like you said, it can
And
be
then you
boring
got
at
like
times.
Hydra as well.
Yeah, Hydra, big thing in Winter Soldier. Like that's a big
Mm.
thing. So I feel like the
Yeah.
effects of First Avengers are so important to the rest of the MCU.
Hmm.
I would say it's one of
Yeah,
the
and
more
I think
important films.
I think that's what I said in the review about First Avenger, is that as a standalone film I didn't enjoy it, but in terms of the MCU itself, it does really well with that part of things.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
from watching all these films subsequently, I can see how much of a ripple effect it's had. It's like I didn't expect that First Avenger would have a connection to Ant-Man. It's like
Yeah,
you just wouldn't expect that, would you?
yeah, exactly. I agree, and I think it's done very, very well. So I think I like the sort of like the first scene, also the CGI for like Michael Douglas and Hayley Hatwell, however you say her name. It's done really, really well. It's very convincing, especially Michael Douglas. Like that looks like a very, very young, like Michael Douglas. Like it looks very, very good. So
And also the fact that they aged up the same actor from Iron Man 2 for Howard Stark.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
He does.
I
He does.
like it.
He does look a little bit like Grindelwald, though, with like the snowy hair.
Yeah, yeah. But I do like that beginning scene. It just makes this film feel so connected to the rest of the MCU, even though the film itself feels like very much filler.
Yeah.
The same way, like I said about Age of Ultron, feels like
Yeah.
filler. This at least makes it feel like it's connected to everything else. It doesn't feel disjointed.
And like I said, not just with the because I did make a comparison before about like the breaking the law, but also with like the tie-in to the MCU with like Howard Stark and stuff. Again, Ant-Man does a lot on a small scale that you will see in Civil War on a big scale. Which I think is that's a great way to set it up. You know what I mean? Like it's like it does.
I agree.
There's so many elements in Ant-Man that is repeated in Civil War, but on a more complex, bigger scale.
Yeah.
So just to have those elements of the story in your mind before going to Civil War is actually a really good step, which makes me think it's like this isn't really like they say it's a Phase 2 film, but it feels like it's actually a Phase 3 film.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It feels like it's more important to the overarching story in Phase 3 than to Phase 2.
Yeah.
So
But then
it's
again,
very odd.
you could also argue that Civil War is a Phase 2 film.
Yeah, because a lot of things are set up from Phase 2 that
But anyway,
sort of paid off in this one.
we'll discuss that more tomorrow.
Yeah.
Any other characters we want to discuss?
I think we've talked about all the characters. I think that are important to the plot in some way. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously Stan Lee's cameo was great. The fact that it happened during one of Lewis's stories was just so.
It makes it even better. Yeah, it's like such a new take on it.
And in terms of the plot, I think like you said, the story is very basic. It's very base level, but what it's held up by is how it focuses on showing you what it's like to be Ant-Man from his POV. I think that's the strongest point.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think it does a very good job at introducing Ant-Man as a character and Scott Lang. Just the main problem with the plot is the villain and how it feels like here midway through, it feels like the plot is on standstill for this Hank and Hope sort of dynamic. While it's good, it just feels like it's just pausing the actual plot. That's the two major problems I have with it. Other than that, it's very surface level, but it does its job very well at showing us Scott Lang as a character, Ant-Man's abilities, and sort of the people around the plot as well. So it's a decent plot, I would say.
Yeah, and I would say for the most part it was very enjoyable.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's a fun plot and fun film.
Yeah, because like it's gotten to the point now, I think, where post Dark World, like even the lower films are still fun.
Yeah, exactly. That's the difference between like everything else and like Dark World. Like even films that have quite a few problems and it feels very unnecessary, but it can still be fun and entertaining. And that's not what Dark World had. It's like the plot feels unnecessary.
Mm,
It's dragged down by the quality of its writing, and also it just isn't fun to watch at all. Other
yeah,
than it's nice to look at, but then that's pretty much it.
yeah, yeah. But like pretty much everything post Dark World seems like it just has way more purpose, and even the filler movies like Ant-Man, they're still fun.
Yeah. I feel like that Marvel definitely learned their lesson after Dark World because like they got to have like in future films they need to have some sort of quality in there to not make it feel like a massive failure. And Ant-Man
Yeah.
is not a failure in any way.
Whereas
It's a very fun, entertaining film.
whereas with DC, they don't actually learn from their mistakes. They make
No, they
another
just
film. They just make a
exactly,
worse film.
yeah, exactly. They go from a film like Batman and Superman that has a lot has a lot of problems, and then like a couple of years later they're already at Justice League, and even
Yeah,
then
and
that's an
Suicide
extremely
Squad.
ugly film. So like,
And you get Suicide Squad as well.
yep.
It's just like, and it's like it's so bad that they have to reboot it again.
With the
But yeah,
person that who originally made the film that they based it off on in terms of style.
Mm.
So like,
yeah. Back to Ant-Man. The screenplay for this film is done by 4 people,
mm-hmm,
similar to the first Iron Man film. Obviously, Edgar Wright was the
mm-hmm.
first. Then you had Joe Cornish, Adam McKay, and Paul Rudd.
Yeah, I saw that Paul Rudd also wrote for this film. That had to be for like, in my mind, that had to be like for a few bits as well, but also how the way Scott Lang was written as well. I have
Mm.
to assume that. I can't imagine he helped with like the massive plot points. But he might have. It might surprise me that he did. But there have to have been like some of like Scott Lang's lines and the
Mm.
sort of way like his comedy works because Paul Rudd is quite a funny person and quite a funny like guy and actor.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of thing I would probably assume that. But he could also wrote quite a bit of this film as well. So
Yeah. When it comes to the writing, I think this film could have easily been a massive disaster and a mess, but they managed to stitch together what they could, and they did a really good job of stitching it together, considering the circumstances.
yeah, I would
Because
agree.
whenever a writer or a director leaves halfway through a project, it can get really, really bad.
Yeah, exactly. Because like it said that Edgar Wright spent a long time on this, but he after like doing all his films and then going to this like solely, he spent like a whole year on it and then left. So that's a big chunk of production that's just gone, in a sense. So
Mm.
I think with the circumstances, they did pull it together and made it really like a quality film. While there are problems, it still was fun and entertaining. So hats off to
Yes.
the screenwriters.
Yes, and the direction was by Peyton Reed, who took over from Edgar Wright when it came to the filming of the film. I still think, even though maybe Reed isn't as famous as Wright, I still think Peyton Reed managed to pull off making this film look extraordinary from a visual point of view.
Oh yeah, I would agree.
Did a really good job.
Yeah, I think he did a very, very good job. And while obviously I would have like preferred to have Edgar Wright as director because I think he's, like I said before, he's a fantastic director. But I think Peyton Reed did do a really, really good job with the direction, especially in those scenes with like Lewis telling the stories. I think those are really, really well directed, and a lot of the stuff, especially the action scenes, are very well directed as well, using that
Mm,
sort of the sort of unique of Ant-Man's abilities and using that to their advantage in the sort of action scenes in the direction is very well done.
mm. Yeah, I thought the direction was really good all the way through. I really like especially the bathtub scene. That was great. Like, I
Yeah,
love how flat it felt.
yeah,
Because usually when the camera moves when someone's running, it'll go like this. But because it was a bathtub, it would like thud down like that.
yeah. It was very well done and very cool.
Hmm. The music of this film was by Christophe Beck. Christopher Beck has done Garfield, The Pink Panther, The Hangover, Percy Jackson, Pitch Perfect, and Frozen.
Right. That's
So
a lot of
quite a
stuff.
back catalogue there.
Yeah.
A lot of like kids films.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that this film has that sort of element to it as well, especially
Mm.
with the motivation with
It's
Scott Lang.
interesting.
Yeah.
Similar to Guardians, it's got that element, but then there's
Mm.
also a lot of swearing.
Yeah. Yeah, like for example, like Hank Pym saying Scott's full of shit, for example, like so it's very different from that kind of stuff, this film, but you can tell it has that sort of element to it that it's like it's got a lot of like not necessarily like children humor, but like it feels like this could be a kids film, much like Guardians was as well.
Mm. But that had a lot of swearing as well.
Yeah, exactly. That had a lot. I
It's
think
very
I've said that had
strange. It's very
a lot more.
strange. I just don't quite know what the target audience is.
Mm.
I assume it's teenagers.
Yeah, it's because mostly films are like rated PG-13 and stuff, so it's
Mm.
you can go back and forth for how you look at it.
I kind of feel like in Phase 2, Marvel just got like to the point where they're like, well, we can do it if we want now because we're
Yeah.
unstoppable, so we can, have swearing in these movies.
Yeah, people are going to go and see the films anyway, so.
Mm. And it's like it's not like they're going to get in trouble. It's Disney.
Right. Yeah.
They own the world.
Mm.
But the music, I don't remember it specifically.
No, there wasn't really much of a memorable score, which is odd because I think lately in Phase 2, I think it has had more memorable scores than Phase 1, apart from Avengers. I think this, and maybe First Avengers as well, but that felt very patriotic at times.
Mm.
But I felt Phase 2 has been a very good phase for scores. This one felt like one of the minor ones, I would say. I think probably on the same level as like Dark World in terms of score, memorable scores.
Yeah. But that's because Dark World was rushed.
Yeah.
Because they had to get whatever his fate, Brian Tyler from Iron Man 3 to come in the last minute to do the score.
Yeah. Yeah. But like, I think it's fine, but none of it's just memorable. There was never any like bad score going on in these scenes. It served the film fine, but that's really all I can say about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of the thing about the Marvel films is that a lot of the time I think it's just that the scores are designed to blend in with the film and not steal the show, and that's why we don't notice them.
Yeah. Mm.
Which means they have done a good job with it.
Yeah.
Like I can't mark it down because of it.
Yeah, you can't really.
Like the only time I can mark something down is if I notice something for being bad.
Yeah.
And for example, I didn't really like some of the score in First Avenger. That's why I would mark it down slightly for that. But whereas with a film like this, where it's there but I don't notice it, I can't mark it down because I can't specifically point out what I didn't like.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anything else we want to say about the writing, direction, or music before we move on to the trivia?
No, I think we said everything we can about them.
Yeah, I think it just looks really great.
It looks great.
The demonstration scenes were fantastic. Right, I guess it's time for the trivia. There's not a lot of trivia for Ant-Man. Surprisingly, it's quite a small amount.
And considering like the circumstances of like, for example, the director and stuff like that, so that's quite hard.
At first, the film was meant to focus on the original Ant-Man Hank Pym. However, Pym developed several personalities, one of whom abused his girlfriend, and producers decided he was not family-friendly. Instead, the focus shifted on Scott Lang, with Pym as a mentor and a supporting character.
Right. That'd be interesting. So I assume that in the comics, like Hank Pym is the main Ant-Man. Then I guess.
Yeah, I assume so.
Alright.
When Paul Rudd told his 9-year-old son he was going to be Ant-Man, his son said, "Wow, I can't wait to see how stupid that'll be."
It's. I think. Yeah. It's got silly at times, but I think in a good way. So that's quite funny.
Yeah. Michael Douglas celebrated his 70th birthday on set. As an homage to his on-screen character and to celebrate the milestone, the crew presented him with a birthday cake decorated in icing with ants crawling over the film reel.
That's quite cool.
According to Michael Douglas, the costume for Paul Rudd had to be altered because of his muscles. Rudd had gone on an extensive training and workout regimen in order to build the proper muscle size for a superhero, but Rudd had become so muscular that they had to soften his costume up.
Yeah, like he got in proper shape for this film. Like you see, like how like in shape like Paul Rudd is. Like Jesus, I mean, it's just Ant-Man.
I mean, yeah, but that's what they all do.
Yeah, exactly. They all.
It's like, I'm going to be a superhero, so I want to get huge.
Mm.
So I can lift the hammer. The laser sounds fired from Yellow Jacket's suit are the same sound as the main gun on an 80-80 being fired in the Star Wars movies.
I noticed
Disney owns Marvel and Star Wars.
Yeah, I noticed that when every time it fired, I was like, oh yeah, it sounds exactly like it. So.
Edgar Wright wanted the film to be completely standalone, with no references to other films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This plan did not match the studio plan for the MCU. This, among other factors, led to Wright leaving.
I would feel like if they did have like no mention of anything from the MCU, it would feel very disjointed.
Yeah.
So I would probably disagree with Edgar Wright. Though he probably still would have made it like a really good film, but it wouldn't feel like an MCU film.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, but we'll never know. So.
The preview for the first teaser was ant-sized, which is to say that it's almost completely impossible to tell what's going on in it. A human-sized trailer went up the next day.
Yeah, that I saw like a lot of marketing for this after it came out, and it's very odd how they marketed. Like there's a poster where like there's just it's all white apart from a little like dot, which you could assume it's like Ant-Man. So yeah, the marketing for this film was very odd.
Yeah, it's just sort of an inside joke, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The preview for the first teaser was I already said this. Sean Bean, Pierce Brosnan, and Gary Oldman were considered for the role of Hank Pym.
Oh, Gary Oldman probably would have been a nice choice.
Don't think Sean Bean's too rough for that role.
Yeah, he probably would have died in this film. Like when Hank gets shot, they would have written him to die in that scene or something.
Oh dear. Pierce Brosnan. Not Pierce Brosnan. But yeah, Gary Oldman could have worked, but I always see him as either Sirius Black or Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, but I think that would have been a decent casting, I think. But I think Michael Douglas does great anyway, so.
Edgar Wright said he'd never watched the finished film, saying it would be kind of like asking me, do you want to watch your ex-girlfriend have sex?
I don't think it's that extreme, but I get what he means. I would still, even if I was in a situation, I still would want to see it to see how it turned out, and see if I would think that my version would have been better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think it's on the same level as what he's saying. So yeah.
Adrian Boddy, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Ewan McGregor were all in the running for the role of Scott Lang.
Ewan McGregor is that as Scott Lang.
I
don't know
Scottish. Too Scottish.
He would have. I've never heard him put on an American accent before, so I wouldn't know.
Not sure. Atoms consist of mostly empty space, as proven by Ernest Rutherford in his gold foil experiment. Therefore, it is theoretically possible to shrink or expand material, although the means to do so are beyond present-day technology.
Yeah.
So Ant-Man could be real.
Yeah.
During the helicopter fight scene when Darren Cross is shooting at Ant-Man, you see the briefcase fall, and on that moment, an iPhone 6s Gold is in the case. The iPhone 6s's release date was 9th of September 2015, which is 3 months after Ant-Man's official release date.
That's quite cool. That's good marketing.
Yeah. Rightio. Conclusion and rating out of 10 for Ant-Man.
Right. Ant-Man is a very fun film, very entertaining, and has a very decent plot. And Paul Rudd as Ant-Man is a great casting choice. But as a film compared to the rest of the MCU, much like Age of Ultron, feels very much like filler. It feels like the villain is very much like all the other MCU villains, doesn't have much impact on the story, especially in this one where it feels like the antagonist and protagonist feel very separate in terms of their conflicts. This film is fun, but feels a bit too long, and second act feels like the plot's on pause. So I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10.
Righty then. Yep, I think this is a very fun film. Very basic, but I enjoyed it. It was well polished, well directed, well acted, and Paul Rudd as Scott Lang really carries the film. Some of the outside factors in this film, such as Southern Side characters, didn't really work as well as I'd hoped, but there are visual elements in this film that make it worth watching, such as the, gigantic Thomas the Tank Engine, just stuff like that. Some of the comedy's really great. And some of the ideas that were put into this film by Edgar Wright were carried through, like with Lewis's character. That was fantastic. I think this is just a nice small film that's enjoyable, and the fact that it's part of the MCU and comes in between Age of Ultron and Civil War is kind of a slight against it. I think if it were in another spot, maybe in Phase 1, people would maybe appreciate it more. But overall, I do think that it is an enjoyable film. And like you, I'm also going to give it a 6.5 out of 10.
Cool.
So now it's time for, because obviously this is the end of Phase 2.
Yeah, doesn't feel like it.
so like we did for the Avengers, we'll sort of do a recap and a ranking for Phase 2.
Yeah.
So have you come up with a list, or should I?
Yes,
go
I have.
first?
I've come up with a list. I've literally just entered Ant-Man into the list.
Cool.
Yeah, okay, just give me a sec to get it up. Right, so I have at number 6, because there's obviously 6 films in this Phase 2, I have For the Dark World at the bottom, and because I wasn't on it, I did give a rating. I would have given it a rating of 3 out of 10. I think Thor the Dark World is just a abomination of a film. I just think like it has nothing really going for it. All it has for me going for it is how it looks. Other than that, characters are crap, stories crap, villains crap, which is a shame because Christopher Eccleston is great as an actor. Music is average. Nothing about it is really something I would ever want to go back to. So next, at number 5, I actually have the film we've just talked about, Ant-Man, because at 6.5 out of 10, I feel like we've said in the whole review, it's fine, but it has problems. Don't have to go much more than that because we've just talked about it. Number 4, I have Iron Man 3. I would have given it a 6.5 out of 10 as well. I feel like it's better than Ant-Man mainly because of Tony Stark's development in the film, especially his anxiety, because I really do like that in the film. It just feels like the third act is very much a mess, and I think the villain is also very poor as well. Though I do like the Mandarin stuff at the beginning, but obviously you have the twist. And while I think the actor does a good job with the comedy stuff, but then when it's the real Mandarin is the other guy, I can't remember his name. That's how much I don't care about him. I feel like it's very much background. So yeah, Iron Man 3 is 4. Number 3, I have Age of Ultron. Age of Ultron is a good film, but I think, like we said in the review, it feels very much like filler, and you can't really have that in an Avengers film. It needs to feel big, and it just didn't feel big. It feels very much like the placeholder in between, like the first Avengers film, and then going into Infinity War or even Civil War. So, yeah, I think it's number 3. At number 2, I have Guardians of the Galaxy. I think Guardians of the Galaxy is a fantastic film, and introducing all these main characters is so well done. It's a fantastic comedy film as well, so I think it's great. And then at number one, obviously, I have Winter Soldier, which I would have given a 9 out of 10. Winter Soldier is one of the best MCU films to date. Today, it's such a action-packed film, but it's a great kind of political story as well. I think the twist of Bucky Barnes being the Winter Soldier is fantastic, and I think it's so well done. Chris Evans is great in the film. Scarlett Johansson is great. Introduction of Falcon is done really well as well, and he's a very fun character. I just think Winter Soldier is the best film in Phase 2 by not a mile, but quite a bit of distance. Like the closest one is Guardians, but Winter Soldier has more importance to the MCU than Guardians does, so that's why it's a number one with a 9 out of 10.
Rightio. Right, so my number 6, obviously, Thor: The Dark World. It's a bad film. I don't want to watch it again. I don't think I hate it as much as everyone else does, but that's mainly because I think it's because there are elements that I liked about the first Thor film that others didn't really care for.
Yeah.
And some of those elements carried on to the second. That's being said, it is still a bad film. I hate the Earth storyline. It ruins the film for me. I think some of the Asgard and Dark World stuff is interesting, but it never really goes anywhere. It's mainly in the visuals and also Loki, where the film is strong for me. I think Dark World especially has a really, really cool ending with the twist of Loki being still alive. Of course, that's already been done before, but it's still in itself does present. It did make me feel good at the end of the film. It's just unfortunately the vast majority of it's taken up by Darcy and naked Eric Selvig and boring plain Jane Foster, and that really drags down the film. But overall, I think there are some slightly underrated elements to it, but it's still a bad film, and it's right down there as one of the worst of MCU, right down there close to Incredible Hulk, I would say.
Yeah.
And then 5th place, I've actually got Iron Man 3.
Right.
I don't dislike this film. I like it.
No.
I give it a 6.5. But the main problem for me is that I really like the first half. If the first half was the entire, if that was the entire film, it would probably be up there with, maybe near Guardians, or even...
It would have been
not,
around the 8.
Probably not Winter Soldier, but it probably
No.
have been near Guardians, I'd say, above Age of Ultron. But unfortunately, the second half of this film let me down, and a lot of people will be like, maybe it's because of the Mandarin. It's not really because of the Mandarin. It's mainly just because the entire tone of the story dropped off. It felt like it ran out of energy, and then I really didn't like Act 3 with the big bash battle with the Pepper Potts thing. Yep. It just felt weird, blowing up the suits as well. It's just they were trying to do something deep and meaningful, but it just fell a bit flat for me, and that's sad because I really, really, really liked what they were going for in the beginning. Then above that, I've got Ant-Man, just slightly above, also a 6.5. The main reason why I like it more is because it's consistent. And Ant-Man for me is on par with the first Thor. It's not a great film, but it's one that I enjoy for certain reasons, mainly for the visuals. Especially and also Paul Rudd Scott Lang is the main highlight. Then I guess what was it above that? It would be number 3.
3, yeah.
Yeah, number 3 is Age of Ultron. For me, this film should be called Iron Man 4 because that's what it is. It's if it were called Iron Man 4, it would probably be my favorite Iron Man film.
Yeah,
but unfortunately, it's my least favorite Avengers film by a long shot, and that's a shame because it's not really an Avengers film. It's an Iron Man film that has all the Avengers in it. Yeah. That's the problem. But I do think it's a good film, and it doesn't deserve some of the hate it gets just because it's a disappointing Avengers film. It is still a really good film and a really nice introduction for Vision, and the party scene is great, but unfortunately there are a couple of things that drag it down, like the Thor storyline. Then, of course, second place is Guardians of the Galaxy, a fantastic film with a bit of a disappointing villain, but for the most part, it's a great watch, and the main cast are fantastic. And I give that an 8.5. And then, of course, first place, Winter Soldier, 9 out of 10. Russo's take Captain America in a completely different direction, but they still follow up on First Avenger, has a great impact on the MCU as a whole. The direction, the acting, the cast, everything just works so well. It's mature, it's gritty, it's violent, and it's fantastic. And there are very, very little nitpicks that I have with the film that bring it down slightly, but it's still a 9 out of 10 for me. So Winter Soldier is by far the best of Phase 2, I would say.
Yep, I'd agree.
Yes. Right. Of course, next time we start Phase 3 with Captain America Civil War. And I can already see you smiling at this.
Yep. Oh, yay.
It's the one you've all been waiting for since the beginning.
I am very excited for Civil War. And I just like a lot about it I love. Because I rewatched it yesterday after watching Ant-Man. I'm just like, after watching it, obviously just a little preview, go before we get into it tomorrow. I love it even more than I did before. So, yeah.
Yep.
I'm very excited.
We're probably going to have Adam on that one as well, so that should be exciting. So anyway, we will see you next time for Civil War.